Citizens, welcome to ECCB Connects. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is celebrating 33 years of providing you, the people of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, with a stable financial system and a strong currency. As we mark this milestone, we look at some of the areas the ECCB is focusing on at this time. I have with me Governor Mr. Timothy N.J. Antoine. Governor, welcome to ECCB Connects.
Thank you, Shamalon. It's great to be back.
Governor, we often get the question from the public about the ECCB printing money, and we know the ECCB does not do that. But given the fiscal challenges our member governments are facing at this time, why doesn't the ECCB print money?
Great question. It's a question I think that many of our citizens ask, and maybe even our government sometimes. It would seem to be so easy to simply print money and solve our problems. I think we have to step back and recognize why our currency is strong. What makes the EC dollar strong? Well, very simply, it's our foreign reserves, the backing of our EC dollar. You see, it's not the crisp notes that we get from the bank. Those are almost of no value, save and except the foreign reserves. What gives the dollar that you spend any value is the fact that we have a strong backing of our EC dollar. In fact, at this moment, it's back around 98 cents, which basically means for every one EC dollar in circulation, we have about 98 cents in foreign reserves. So it's almost 100% back. Now, if we were to print money, there are a couple of ways we could do that. Essentially, we would lend a lot of money to our governments, possibly our banks, if they needed, or we could attempt to give it away, although that's illegal, so we couldn't actually do that. But here's what would happen. First of all, everybody would get excited, and everybody would be happy about the fact they have more money in their pockets. Let's say we gave it to the governments, whether we loaned it to them or we gave it away, for argument's sake. Two things would happen. First of all, you would have inflation. It's a straight issue of demand and supply. The classic too much money chasing too few goods. All of a sudden, cost of living would skyrocket. But more fundamentally, what would people do with this money? They would spend it. And how would they spend it? They would spend it essentially in imports, because the nature of our open economy means that there's a high preponderance of imports in our trade mix. In other words, we import, 90% or whatever, what we consume. So once people spend, what happens is that you actually will have to buy imports. What does that mean? The use of foreign reserves. So in an instant, the value of our dollar would drop dramatically because we have to use up a lot of foreign exchange for the imports, for the purchases that we're making. The reality is that there is no shortcut to our development. The idea of printing money is an attempt at a shortcut. There is no such shortcut. In fact, what would happen would be a deep cut to the value of the EC dollar and to the standard of living of our people in the ECCU. There is no shortcut for us improving our tourism product and being more competitive so that we could attract visitors and they could spend more. There's no shortcut for us to make sure we're more competitive in agriculture, not just in primary production, but in value added. Because what those sectors do bring foreign exchange in, which then helps us to back the dollar. So in short, you can't print money, you have to earn it. You have to earn your way in this world. We have to be more productive, we have to be more competitive, and we have to produce and earn foreign exchange. We have to deal with renewable energies because that's the one way of reducing our importation of oil to the extent that we could generate more of our energy from our God-given resources such as solar, PV, wind, and geothermal. So you either earn foreign exchange or you save foreign exchange. That's the way for us to fast track or expedite our development, not for the central bank to print money. As I said, if we did that, it would be what seems to be a shortcut would be a deep cut to the value. It's the simplest way of devaluing the dollar, if we wanted to do that. And nobody wants that. So the idea of printing money is not on. What some countries have done is to lend excessively to governments. But and the governments can't pay back. You have a problem. When it ends up in use of foreign reserves, you have a problem, as I explained, because the backing gets undermined. And you reduce the backing. You weaken the dollar until after a while you have no dollar, you have devaluation. So the printing of money is not a good idea. It's not something we can do. We have to earn our way in the world. We have to produce foreign exchange. We do that by what we do in tourism and agriculture and ICT and so on, what we do in energy. And our governments also have to be fiscally responsible, which means that they have to be in a position to generate additional savings or additional funds to invest in education, because education is an investment that will ultimately help us to earn foreign exchange skills, right? Those are the things we have to do. So, Shermalan, there's no shortcut. If there were a shortcut, we would have taken it a long time ago. And I don't think they'll need too many of us around to do that. I mean, that's a simple proposition. So we can't print money. That's not an option we have. The one thing that has really worked for us is the stability of our dollar over 40 years. And there's a reason for that, by maintaining a high backing. And we have to continue to do that because it brings benefits to the people of our region. Stability means confidence, foreign direct investment, lower inflation. Those are benefits to a stable dollar, and we don't want to disrupt that. So I'm glad you asked the question, because it's something that people ask all the time. And I'm happy to get into more details, as we go forward on these issues.
In a previous program, we looked at this serious issue that's facing the region, that of correspondent banking relations. What is the ECCB doing about this issue? Again,
a good question. So for most people, I think we have an issue in the world, not just the Caribbean. Of course, we're very concerned about the situation in the Caribbean with correspondent banks. Simply put, for us to access the international financial system, for us to receive remittances, for us to make payments, we need to use a correspondent bank. Some bank in the US or Europe, the UK, Canada, that our bank in the Caribbean, in the ECCU, would send money through that bank in the US or in Europe. It's a correspondent bank. You want to do a wire transfer, send money to your child who is studying abroad. It's a wire transfer. You need a correspondent bank. What has happened in recent times, in the last year or two, is that we've begun to see some of these relations severed. And the main reason why that has come about is the attempt by these international banks, these correspondent banks, to manage the risk of money laundering and terrorist financing. And because we are small, they kind of figure, well, based on what we're earning and based on the risk, especially if they're fined by regulators in the US, for example, it's not worth it. The money we're making is not worth the fine we will have to pay. We may be making $1 million, we may have to pay a fine of $50 million. That doesn't make sense. So a number of them have cut or have served notice that they will terminate these relationships. The problem with that, there's several problems. And the real issue are the unintended consequences. Because what it does is that it cuts us off from the international financial system at a time when you want to get us even more involved in the national for our development. But more than that, it encourages the very problems that you want to avoid. Because money laundering is the conversion of illegal money gained through illegal means into the legal system. If you force people to hold cash and move around cash, you are encouraging that sort of behavior because there's less traceability, less transparency. That's precisely what you don't want. So what have we been doing in the ECCB, in the ECCU? We've done several things. So the first of all is to raise awareness through advocacy using our political and diplomatic channels. In fact, only last week, Prime Minister Chasney, Prime Minister of St. Lucia, and myself were in Puerto Rico talking to bankers and the owners of the cruise lines, explaining the problem to them, helping them to understand it's not just our problem, it is their problem. Because if we can't make payments to them, they're going to starve. and they have big business interests in the Caribbean, the cruise lines, for example, so that we need to come together to solve this problem. And we are very heartened, Prime Minister Shastny and I, when on the 28th of September, the head of the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, which is a regulator in the US, actually acknowledged that what is happening is not what was intended. That you have a situation where in an attempt to address these risks of money laundering and terrorist financing, regions are being cut off, and that is not good for the international payment system. It's not good for the US economy, it's not good for the Caribbean. And we welcome those comments, because we think there is a growing awareness that this problem has to be solved in a sensible way by bringing all the parties together around the table. So we're working on this, and I must say in a couple of cases we've been able to the banks have been able to secure extensions. In a couple of cases the banks have been able to get the corresponding banks to change their mind, but we still have issues. And so we're going to have some hope. There is some hope, and I think after the US elections we're going to have some further discussion at the highest level of the US government to see how we could resolve this problem with the Treasury, with the regulators, with ourselves, and so on. But suffice it to say that we're very much on the job. And I should also mention that Prime Minister Gaston Brown, who is the lead Prime Minister in CARICOM on this issue, is convening a meeting of stakeholders on this issue in Antigua and Barbuda on the 27th and 28th of October, I believe, with the expressed intention of bringing people together to see how we could find a sensible resolution to this issue. Because it's a real threat. If left unresolved, it will disrupt and destroy our economies.
I need all stakeholders on board.
All stakeholders on board, all around the table, to figure out what we can do for our mutual benefit.
Governor, 1st October marked 33 years of the existence of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. How is the bank marking this milestone?
Well, it's a wonderful milestone, and we have cause to celebrate, so we are celebrating. First of all, we began with a church service on the 2nd of October. So across the currency union, we had church service where it's Thanksgiving really, where we all went to church, a church in one of our countries, and we celebrate. And we tend to rotate, we move around the churches. And so that was a good way to start, because it is in Him we live and move and have our being. And then there are a number of activities that we have during the month. Financial Information Month is now well known in the currency union. We have saving and investment courses. We have symposia for business and innovation. A lot of support for small business people, entrepreneurs, where what we want to do is help empower them to pursue their dreams and see their dreams come true. There's a lot of literacy program, financial tips. I'm also pleased to say that internally we'll be launching the ECCB Distinguished Alumni Series, in fact, on the 17th of October. This is basically what we do here is we encourage and we invite distinguished alumni of the ECCB, past staff members who distinguish themselves, who are working in senior positions all over the world, to come back to the central bank and share with us, with our staff, especially our young ones, their journey, and encourage and inspire them. And we'll be launching that series on the 17th of October with Dr. Oral Williams, who is at the IMF and who is a very distinguished researcher, and we're very proud that he'll be kicking it off for us. So there are lots of activities throughout the month, and I want to thank all of our partners, all the FIM partners, Financial Information Month partners, who've worked with us over many years and continue to do so. The commercial banks, the credit unions, the corporate citizens, individuals, of course our resident reps who work very hard with their teams, and our team here at the Central Bank, Corporate Relations. Sybil Welch, who obviously has led a lot of this, just for what we do. And so it's a time of celebration, and there's much to be thankful for.
Okay. Before we end, as the bank celebrates 33 years, what's your message to the people of the region?
That together we're stronger. That's the value of us being together, as we've seen for these last 33 years and even before. And that we must continue to work together for a strong and thriving currency union. We recommit ourselves to you and to our region, to work hard for you, to serve you in the areas where we can help, whether that is the payment system, whether that's advice to our governments, whether that is ensuring that we can raise our living standards through higher levels of production and competitiveness in our key areas such as tourism and agriculture. But we commit ourselves to work with you, and the lesson is that when we work together, we achieve so much more. So I salute the people of our region, the founders of the Monetary Union, past governors, past and present, staff, for their contribution, and say long may it continue.
Governor, thank you very much for speaking with us on
You're most
ECCB
welcome.
Connects.
Most welcome, Shamilan. Always a pleasure.
You're watching ECCB Connects, protecting our currency, developing our region. And now for this week's financial tip.
Establish a college fund for your children's education.
To view any episode of ECCB Connects, anytime, any place, at your convenience, check out our YouTube channel, ECCB Connects.
This brings us to the end of another episode of ECCB Connects. Remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join us again next week for another program.